So what would bring this scenario into reality? What would make this possible? What would enable this? I want to talk about some of the components, some of the themes, some of the threads, some of the pieces of technology that are necessary for enabling this kind of a learning scenario, and talk about what I think are the values of some of the things that were elucidated in the scenario. Okay. So one of them is learning standards. You guys have probably all, how many of you have heard about or know anything about learning standards like SCORM or LMS or AICC or any stuff like that? So a few of you, okay, several of you. What are the value of learning standards to generating this future? Well, having some consistent, you all kind of know the value that standards have had to the growth of the internet, right? Having the web based on HTML and HTTP open and widely adopted standards has allowed for enormous amount of technology investment and technology development to create this incredible infrastructure, right? People all knew, I can create things, so long as they conform to this standard, they're going to work with everybody else's things. That's a good thing. Why I think that's a good thing for learning is that if we can agree on some of the basic standards for formatting learning and for describing learning, we can allow the development of third-party tools to be learning aware, to support learning. So, for example, in the example where Mary dials into her learning portal and speaks to the portal and gets content delivered to her, that voice recognition technology, if it was learning aware, if it understood the language of learning events and learning systems, could be better integrated with a learning system. So having third-party standards allows for people who are developing new technologies, whether it be voice recognition or new media technologies or whatever, to be aware of how to enable learning with their new technologies. It also allows us, with a shared set of standards for describing content, to focus on the learner experience, to really focus a little less on the formatting and focus a lot more on learning or experience. And it enables tool development. Again, with some consistent underlying technology standards, we can support the development of tools for creating simulations, for creating rich experiences for learners. All right, disclaimer, framing statement. This is probably one of the more used and perhaps overused and misused terms. How many people have some notion of what learning objects are, or have a thought about that? Actually, maybe fewer than. All right. So there's a lot of talk about learning objects and what those things are. And I use this term here so that we can sort of ping what is familiar to you. Creating learning content with in an object-based architecture, meaning that learning experiences are modular. They're self-contained. They come in small units, and those units can be linked together. Those units are standalone, and you can pull a small piece of a learning experience out of a larger learning experience, and it will have relevance. That you can describe relationships between objects, that you have metadata that allows search and retrieval of those objects. Those principles of object-based systems applied to learning content allow for you to create some powerful learning solutions. So they enable things like just-in-time learning, where I can use the metadata to do active search and retrieval. Mary dialing in and getting a specific learning chunk from the system is enabled by having rich metadata. They allow for dynamic learning assembly with minimal impact on learning experience. What does that mean? If I take a whole collection of content that addresses a specific performance objective, and I want to deliver just the stuff that'll be relevant to an individual learner, I need to have that smaller collection of learning hold together, have coherence, maintain context, make sense. If I don't design all of the content in a modular way that allows each individual chunk to stand alone and to relate together, if I pull it apart to deliver a custom experience for a learner, I'm going to degrade the integrity of the experience. Okay? It removes the constraints and the scope of learning so I can create tiny little learning moments as well as large learning experiences, and allows for dynamic presentation in multiple mediums. Most of the standards for learning objects that we know about today are built upon XML. XML allows us to create content once and deliver content to multiple devices, multiple venues, multiple languages, multiple platforms. Okay. Personalization. We need the ability to deliver personalized learning experiences based on people's performance, that are focused on people's ability to perform. It can be prior performance in other learning activities, so the system knows how a person performs and knows, hey, we've got to kick them back into the simulation and not exit the simulation, because if we don't, she won't really get the concepts. So it can be based on prior learning performance or prior real-world performance. The fact that Mary uploaded to the system some information about Sarah and Sarah's real-world performance can influence how the system delivers learning experiences to her. So it should be able to be based on both prior learning experience performance and real-world performance. Okay? It can be based on pre-assessment, skill profiles. I think things that are important in terms of building an infrastructure for having skills impact how we deliver learning are that the skills be role-based, that they be modular, so that I can quickly create dynamic skill profiles, and that we have shared skill repositories. Right? There's a huge investment out there in the world for in government and in large businesses and with vendors of technology and professional associations, all the kinds of people that try to define what skills are appropriate for somebody, to create skill definitions, and they're totally isolated in silos. I think in the future we need skill repositories which can be shared and can be drawn on, so that when none of us like to think about enabling an employee to leave our organization, right? You don't want to enable them to take their experience with them because you don't want them to go someplace else. But at the same time, you want to be able to look out in the world of skilled people and find who's got the right experiences for what you need. And I think that benefit is greater than trying to capture people by not letting them escape with a transcript of their skills. So if we can build as the web is a shared information repository, if we can build shared skill repositories so that people we can draw on those skills, I think it will enable getting the right people to do the kind of work that you need. Okay, a focus on performance. This example, the scenario that I laid out for you was really focused on how learning can enable performance in real time. So not always preparing us for what we think we need to know later, but help us respond to a changing environment. Help us respond to crises. Help us deal with areas of non-competency. Mary and her team didn't know about agent technology. They needed to respond to a customer request that was outside of their area of competencies. They used learning to bridge that gap. And not only that, what Mary did was she used learning to manage her team. Mary used learning to drive the performance of her team, sending them a tutorial, telling them to complete that, running the meeting off of the results of that. She went to learning first. She used, imagine a world where how we addressed people's performance problems was not by telling them that they needed to, get with the program, but we provided them the resources they needed to bridge those performance gaps. Not even told them they needed to bridge those gaps, but we said, here, I can actually manage your performance by driving the learning that you need to you. And enabling real-world feedback. The uploading of the comments about Sarah is not meant to be, and her performance is not meant to be, a reporting on, this person needs help and let's put this in their performance review. This is, wow, I see an opportunity to actually move Sarah forward, move a person on my team forward by providing learning. I mean, it's just such a different thing to identify a gap. Most of us as managers, it's like, identify a gap. God, I got to do something about that. I got to get that person some experience or some training. I got to sit down and mentor them. What if you had at your fingertips the tools to say, gap, boom. Take an action. Might not be the complete actions, probably not all that needs to be done, but to take an action and to impact that right at the moment that it's recognized. So total control. And we're really, the ability, it's control from all aspects. It's the ability for an organization or a team to sort of create learning initiatives to drive change through the organization or drive change through the team by having a facility for creating learning initiatives and sending them down. And it's also by the same management resources for a person to be able to own their own professional development, own their own learning, and to drive their own access to learning. Okay. Intense experience. The more that we are inundated by information, the more that we swim and live in an environment of information overwhelm, the more we need learning experiences that kind of cut through that are intense, that are compelling, that address our needs, that speak to me, that are personalized. It's not just a matter of we want people to be happy, so we want to give them entertaining learning. If you're going to get that learning in there in the environment of information glut, you're going to have to cut through with compelling learning experiences. So it's a matter of whether learning is going to happen or not. If the experience isn't appropriate, isn't compelling, and that doesn't always mean full bandwidth video and simulated 3. Novels are extraordinarily compelling, but they're appropriate to the medium. They're appropriate to the task. So the media needs to be appropriate to the task. You need to provide hands-on practice. People really learn in an environment of doing. We're just scratching the surface of being able to use this medium of the web to enable doing. There's a lot we can do. There's a lot more we can do in the short term. And let me tell you, 5 years from now, anything but a doing interface to learning, well, that's not true. There'll be a lot of doing interfaces to learning and performance. It's just an appropriate match for trying to impact performance. Right? If you want to impact performance, have people perform. Give them a chance to perform in the learning environment. Configurable multimodal collaboration. I think we're also really naive about collaboration. We don't know what that means. We don't know really what works and what doesn't work there. I mean, we, like all of us, I think we have some things that we can do that work. We need to learn a lot more. There's a lot of room to go. And the web and the communications infrastructure we're building is an extraordinary platform, playground to allow us to do that. Robust simulation, visualization in labs. I think that just speaks to the sort of the compelling experience, hands-on, learn from doing.